I was always a big fan of RainWorld, much like everyone else. Well, I was, until that one very night. Changed my view of the game forever. The Steam summer sale had been going on. I've always wanted to play this hit game called RainWorld, but I couldn't afford it. Even with the 100% discount, it was still out of my price range, so I think's of a good idea. This game must have a free version out there somewhere, right? Of course, that's what I thought. I was right. I opened up GitHub and Reddit, and I find multiple different links. Stuff like RainWorld for free, or how to pass first gate, none of them matching what I need. After a couple hours of scavenging through GitHub, I found it. An unknown user with the default image profile, with the name Sone7789, had uploaded a file called Rain.EXE. I'm not too sure why it was called Rain.EXE and not RainWorld.EXE. I didn't think much of it after that and clicked the file to download it. It took about an hour to download. While I waited for that, I decided to make some food. I really like Cheetos, so I poured into a bowl and sat back down while waiting to finish. It finally did. I rejoiced in the savory moment of money saving. However, I noticed something else odd. When I minimized my desktop, a shortcut had already been created. What the hang, I says. Technology is getting so advanced, I thought. Boy, was I wrong. Well, better not waste any time. I sat down my bowl of Doritos and launched the game. A couple seconds pass, and a black window popped up, with the slug cat icon at the bottom. Yes! I shouted. I looked back down at the little slug icon before the window took up my entire monitor into full screen. Now, I may sound crazy when I say this, but I could have sworn I saw the animal's eyes go completely hollow. It's hard to make out that considering their eyes are black normally. But they looked shallow, darkened, and empty, like someone had carved their eyes out with a knife or sickle, or some sort of torturous instrument of death. But I figured it was just a glitch and I ignored it. After all, I just got RainWorld for free. I could not complain. Eventually I had enough of it and selected play. The character select screen was normal. Except it wasn't. However, this was not the case. The only slug cats that I could see were Monk, Spearmaster, and the Watcher. This was weird to me, as there weren't any file in the folder that could indicate I downloaded the other DLCs as well as all the other characters were there, except their picture was blacked out entirely, only showing their name and the words Cycle Null on them. Weirded out by this, I pressed on anyway, just thinking that this must have been a bug. I did get this off GitHub after all. I sighed and selected the first character, Monk. This was a shame, as I had no interest in actually playing the vanilla game, but I shrugged and selected Monk. As this seemed to be my only option, I selected Monk. I held down the select button to get started. Slowly, the game opened. I watched that the slug cat woke up already in the shelter. A bit of confusion rang through me as I exited the shelter, only to find myself in drainage system. That's when I realized that this game was not buggy or glitchy. It was clearly modded. Now, while I knew this, something compels me to keep playing. I sighed. It's only one religion away. I think to myself, how hard can this be? I start to move myself through drainage as one would. The typical movements, getting food, avoiding predators. It appeared normal at first, until I met with something weird at the entrance of the hallway that leads to outskirts. A dead green lizard. Green lizards are hard to kill and have a lot of HP. I noticed that it was bleeding out of several holes, almost like its body had been punctured by something sharp several times. I do not remember RainWorld having blood, I thought to myself. But who knows? This is a modded game, so maybe user mods? Oh well, whatever kills this lizard must be gone. I continued on through the drainage to Outskirts Gate with my 1 karma. Still a little unnerved, this feeling of being watched didn't go away. Felt as this computer look. I kept going. I checked the timer at the bottom to see how much time there was left to live. To my surprise, no time has passed. Oh great, I think. Not only did they hack the mod, they ruined the timer. The timer is there to exist as a dread. I continue, moving through the bottom of Outskirts as I notice no monsters has arrived. Does the code not work? I thought to myself, scratching my chin in contempt. I carry on moving, but then, all of a sudden, the vulture shadow appears in the background. This usually happens right before a vulture is about to land. But no mob arrive. It levitates there for only 20 seconds before it vanished. I hurry along to Industrial, the shadow following me all the way there, but it never appearing. Ever so anxious that any moment vulture is going to appear, but it never happens. Well, that is, until the top of Chimney Canopy. When I made it to room number CCH01, the vulture appeared again. But this time, a small object fell from the sky and landing directly in front of me. After picking it up, I realized it was a black vulture mask, covered in blood. This blood had a unique texture that should have been graphically impossible given the pixel limitations. Almost instant after picking up the mask, I heard a wet thump from off-screen, almost like someone dropped a large bag of meat on a hard floor. Moving over to the sound is where I saw it. The disgusting creature. The vulture that had been following me. It was a dark pink with black bulges all over its figure, almost like it had been skinned. Flies had already begun to swarm around it. I could tell it had been dead for a long time. I walked closer to the skinless animal, and watched my monk reach out to touch it. I couldn't help but feel sad for this creature. Whatever happened to it must have been slow. Perhaps even what happens while chasing me. Something was wrong here. I just knew it. The buzzing got louder and louder and louder until I couldn't take it anymore and walked away, heading off-screen towards the walls of the Karma Gate. It was silence again, until I started hearing buzzing, and something wet. Rhythmic and wet. Not like your typical wetness that you see in Hill World. I stops for a second and see it. The skinless vulture, crawling towards me. Not flying, crawling, moving its body in such a way that seemed impossible. I kept running as fast as I could to the gate, but the hallway seemed almost endless as I could hear the buzzing and wet sopping, quickly pursuing my little yellow creature, but it was too late. Right before the entrance, the vulture grabbed the slug cat with such force, it was over. I heard a rigid snap, almost like a spine being broken as the skinless vulture held Monk in its mouth. Instead of a game over screen, it was just sitting there. No option to quit out or alt-tab. I started to fade to black as I watched the drips of red blood trace down the yellow animal, until it was over. After I booted up the game, I saw the Monk file I was using had changed. File Monk was like the art profile you get after you ascend Monk, but instead of a bright yellow, it was pure black, like somebody took a knife and ripped a hole in my computer, with the start button being replaced with cycle null, like the others. There was nothing I could do to bring that Monk save file back. I sighed in sadness and moved on to Spearmaster. Similar to Monk, Spearmaster did not start in his typical loading screen, but it was in Overgrowth. Unless you've lived under a rock since the 2010s, you know that Overgrowth is only accessible in Saints campaign, which this version didn't have, so for it to be behind in the timeline wrong was very unexpected. Nevertheless, I continued with the game. Besides the weird starting point, everything else about Spearmaster seemed normal. I was a little scared of seeing that skinned vulture again, but Spearmaster can wield 2 spears. I kept going through Undergrowth. This place's Spearmaster was terrible because I didn't have the grapple worm, but I managed. I was an expert at this game after all. My first instinct was to get up to the Echo in Undergrowth. Of course, without the grapple, this made it very hard. Thankfully, I was able to find just enough spears lying around to climb my way up. The normal Echo music did not play. It felt darker and seemed to play in reverse. Something was watching, even still. When I finally got up to where the Echo was supposed to be at first, I froze in my tracks. The Echo was a void, almost similar to how Monk was in his profile. It took a total of 5 minutes before it began talking to me. It said slowly, eerily, "We are watching you." The normal screen fade out played, but instead of gaining karma, Spearmaster's karma went from 3 to 2. I thought certainly to myself, that's not right. Karma is supposed to increase when you meet an Echo, right? Clearly this was not the case, but I never thought of it. What happens when your karma goes below 0? Is that possible? I didn't have any time to think about what would happen if that happened, because when the screen faded back in, I was in Metropolis. This was weird. Isn't this Artificer's area? I thought to myself. I was clearly convinced more than ever that this game must have been hacked, but by who? The source didn't say who it was from, so I felt completely lost. Spearmaster must have felt the same way. I ignored these and continued on. Metropolis has an Echo just like Undergrowth did. Maybe I have to follow it. I make my way to the top tower where the Artificer Echo is supposed to be. The closer I got to the Echo, I began to hear the music. I was getting close. However, once I got to where the Metropolis Echo usually is, it was like before. No model, no warping effect. Just a black tear in the fabric of the game. This one took less time to speak than the other. It uttered a single word. Run away. Before the fade-out occurred, and my karma dropped again, to Karma 1. At this point, I was getting really scared. Whatever was happening to Spearmaster wasn't good, but I just had to see what happened when he reached Karma 0. So I pressed on. This time, truly unexpected, I spawned in the auxiliary array. You know the one. So far up above the clouds, I didn't have to worry about the rain timer, nor did I even have to work my way up to the Echo. The Echo music didn't play at all. It wasn't in reverse or slowed. Only this time a loud, deep, quiet, gurgling sound, as if someone choking on their own blood. Only this time I couldn't quite place it, but it felt off, like it was right behind me. I slowly moved up to the tower to greet whatever loomed above me. A growing feel of dread overcame me. Occasionally I had to look over my shoulder in real life to make sure it wasn't behind me, whatever it was. No words were spoken, just a gentle humming sounds. Blood started pooling out of the hole, so realistic that I could almost touch it. The blood gushed out of the rip, making the snowy plateau of the array become caked in what once must have been a living creature. The fade-in occurred, but much slower than before. As the timer ticked down and the rain began to fall, specks of red began to fade into the scene as blood began downpouring the Spearmaster. The final toll ticked as I reached Karma Zero. As I was gifted an image so horrifying, I can't even describe it. The menu closed and I was returned to the menu screen where Spearmaster remained. Similar to Monk, a hole. After this, I decided to take a break. I had played enough for today. I went to go make some food before heading to bed. All of that had gotten me quite hungry. As I was making my favorite meal, banana bread cheesecake, which only took a couple minutes, I brought it to my kitchen and sat down, thinking to myself, what is going to happen to Watcher? The other two were met with some terrible fate. What would Watcher have to do? When suddenly the light in my kitchen began to flicker. It made me jump at first, but I eventually nationalized it as faulty wiring. I didn't have the best house after all. Once I finished my meal and the light completely turned off. Great, I sighed. I had to go outside to the breaker of my apartment to switch everything back on. I put on my coat, slippers, and walked outside. Once I had got to the breaker downstairs, I kept getting this chill go through my spine. The feeling of being watched started to escalate. I could have swore I saw something out there in the dark. I lived in a pretty populated area, so the chances of a squatter being outside wasn't entirely impossible. I didn't get a good look at it, but I assumed that maybe the darkness and the rain had warped my perception of what was probably just a tree. At first, I completely missed the circuit breaker. The light that normally illuminated the gate had blown out, along with the rest of the building. I had to use the light on my phone to find my way through. Before I found the circuit box itself, I felt something metallic beneath my feet. Upon shining my light, I discovered the panel for the circuit box, laying half-bent on the ground. Looking up to face the exposed wiring, it was completely shredded. The only thing I could compare this damage to would be a bear, but why the hell would a bear do something like this? I occasionally see black bears digging out of the dumpster, but those aren't typically aggressive. Certainly not with the intent of slashing a commune circuit breaker. I couldn't do anything about this except maybe report it, but honestly I didn't feel like doing that either. Whatever did this could still be nearby. My mind kept racing, trying to rationalize the solution. At the time, the only thing I could really think about doing was going back inside, locking the door, and hoping the electricians got there soon, which is what I ended up doing. What was I even doing out there anyway? I turned around and hurried up the stairs to my apartment, briskly but carefully. The rain had made the steps slippery. If I wasn't careful, I could hurt myself. Once I got to the door, I heard something behind me. Someone running up the stairs. No seconds wasted, I flung open the door and rushed in as fast as I could, locking it behind me. I felt my heart racing, but stayed close to the door, hoping to hear whoever that was pass me by. And now that I recall this, it was probably just a neighbor doing the same thing I was doing. Granted, I was a bit jumpy at the time. With my ear to the door, I heard nothing weird. Just the sound of rain chiming against the metal railing. And since the power was out, I couldn't really reach the people at the front office. I could have called them from my mobile, but they wouldn't have picked up. Besides, they were probably already on it. Though with that kind of damage to the breaker, I had no idea how long I'd be without power. And I didn't really want to go outside after that either. It was about 2:06 a.m. if I remember correctly. After I lit up what I could and double-checked the door lock, I went back to my room. The computer had completely shut off, as expected. I don't know if the hack had a reliable save function or not, but I didn't even start the last character, so it shouldn't have mattered. I had gotten into bed and tried to sleep through the anxiety. Eventually my body would get so tired that I'd have to fall asleep. If it hadn't been raining outside, I probably would have been awake all night. The sound of rain hitting the side of my building made me drowsy, and I did eventually pass out. I don't recall having dreams of any sort, but something must have disturbed me because I had woken up. Time had passed about 2 hours. That was when I heard it. A single hard knock. I froze in place, listening to see if it would happen again, which it did. A firm but distant knock echoed through my apartment. At first I thought it was coming from my room, but by the third knock I realized it was coming from outside. Couldn't move. I didn't want to move. I had hoped that it was just management coming to check up on me, but it went on for so long that eventually I grew tired of it. After a while I gently stood up and peeked out into the hallway which led to the front door. The sound was definitely coming from outside. With caution I snuck up to the door without alerting whoever was outside. Right up by the door I hear that knock one more time. Leaning in towards the peephole, fully anticipating it. Something was there, right off to the side. I swear on it when I say I saw something move. I don't think it was human, but I don't know. Before I could fully make sense of what I was looking at, the power was restored. All the noises, lights, and fans that came on at once, knocking me out of that fear response. When I checked the peephole again, it was gone. The thought of opening the door did occur to me several times, but I never acted on it. I wasn't sure what to do. It was 4 a.m. and I hadn't slept well. Figured I maybe hallucinated it. Maybe if I went back to bed, I'd be okay. I pushed through, once more, turning all the lights back off and going into my room and locking the door. Exhausted, I fell on my mattress. It took me a minute to notice it, but something else was illuminating my room. It was my computer, flashing through several lines of code on a neon blue screen, attempting to reboot but failing every time. The error prompt passed by too quickly for me to read what it said. The only words I could recognize at the time were SONE \error \. I held down the power button, and it wouldn't turn off. I unplugged the power strip, and it still wouldn't turn off. I couldn't wrap my mind about how it managed to maintain power. At that point, so much had happened that I was ready to just get in my car and leave, until it stopped and paused on the selection screen of the Watcher. There was nothing different about the Watcher. Their model was completely untouched. However, my keyboard was entirely unresponsive, nothing working except the spacebar. As interesting as this may have been at the time, I didn't want to play anymore. After everything, I sat on the edge of my bed staring at the computer screen, debating in my head whether I hit play or leave my home. The computer wasn't turning off, and surely the figure outside, real or not, could still be there. In my tired days, I came to the conclusion that starting the game, then pressing Alt F4, might work. Hesitating, I held down the spacebar, starting a new save file. The Watcher did not start in hydroponics, but instead 5 pebbles. Not unfortunate evolution. Now, I knew that I told myself to immediately Alt F4, but after I see him, I decided. After I see 5 pebbles, then I would turn the computer off. He was only 2 rooms away from me, and any normal circumstances he'd be unreachable, or dead. I know this sounds crazy after everything that's happened, and now that I'm writing this, I regret pushing on. I went through his standard access shaft. No anti-gravity, no lights, and to my surprise, no rot either. Just a silent, abandoned hallway. Upon reaching the pipe that leads me to the AI room where 5 pebbles is typically kept, something immediately caught my attention. It was dark and the general textures of the room appeared normal, but what stood out to me was this giant hole in the ceiling. The umbilical that keeps his puppet fixed was present, hanging limply like a noose. However, a noose without a body, as 5 pebbles' puppet, was nowhere to be seen. I was fascinated by this, however my curiosity was cut short. Upon realizing that without the anti-gravity or means of wall scaling, I was basically stuck. At this point, I decided to finally Alt F4. The application still wouldn't close. On the second attempt, a speech box appeared, reading very plainly, "Don't go." I tried again. Another speech box. I said, "Don't go." By my 4th attempt, no speech box had triggered. However, I caught notice of something much worse. What sounded like dripping. At first I thought it was coming from the game, but I quickly realized it was actually coming from the other side of my bedroom door. Cautiously looking over my shoulder, too dark to fully see, what looked to be a puddle of water forming underneath my doorframe. I thought at first that maybe a leak had started forming in the hallway, but on closer inspection I saw what I now believe to have been the silhouettes of feet, standing directly in that puddle of water. Before I had time to even fully process the situation, I heard that knock again. I nearly missed it, but in that moment of panic I heard something from the game. I turned around quickly to be met with the last text box reading, "Don't let it see me," before the computer fully shut off, and I was left in total darkness. The knocks persisted, and they got more aggressive. Jumping out the window wasn't an option. If I broke my legs with it still chasing me, I didn't have to think about it. However, I was willing to bet on deceiving it. So I opened my window, then hid in the closet instead, praying that it would take the bait. The moonlight peeked through the slits of my closet door, which eventually began to reshape around whatever that thing was. I didn't even hear it open the door, but I knew it was there with me now. At first I thought it was a person, but the longer I looked at it, the worse it got. I could barely see it through the gaps. It stood tall and jagged, with broad antlers dripping water onto my hardwood floor. I held my breath, waiting for it to find me. But the first thing that I went to investigate was my computer. It stood there motionless in front of the monitor like a statue. I could feel my heart racing and my lungs struggling to keep up, until it finally did something, opening what I could only assume to have been its mouth, creaking out a knocking sound. The same noise I'd been hearing all night. Shifting under the moonlight, it began mimicking all sorts of inhuman sounds. Each one grew more and more distorted the longer it spoke. I had prayed and hoped to God that it wouldn't hear me. Now I have no idea what happened. Even now, I'm still confused on what I did, or if I even did anything. It just stopped moving. It came perfectly still, until I blinked, and it was looking right at me. It didn't even have any eyes, or a face at all, but I could feel its vision piercing into mine. It almost hurt to make eye contact with it. I didn't have time to react at all. Before I could make a break for it, something large and curved came swinging through the closet wall, nearly crushing me. Without a moment of hesitation, I managed to maneuver out of the wreckage and leap out the only open exit. Jumping 2 stories down, I dropped directly into the hedges, injuring my ankles, but not enough to stop me from running. The only thing that kept me from focusing on the pain was the adrenaline fueled by the innate fear of that thing. I kept going and going, trying to find help. I didn't care where it came from, but everywhere I turned, I saw it hiding in the trees, on the street, in the reflections. No idea if what I was seeing was real or not, but I kept running. The last thing I remember from that night was making it to a clearing, coming face to face with it. Even for those few seconds, I hated to see it. My eyes were streaming. I couldn't focus on it. My brain just could not accept that what I was seeing was even there. Before I knew it, everything went bright, until it all went dim, and there was nothing. It's been several weeks since that happened. I write to my relatives, my brother, and everyone else. They believe some of what I say, but they chalk it up to a burglar and attempted murder, which is, I guess, close enough to what happened. But the police who were sent back to my apartment have recorded nothing out of the ordinary. The room was as I left it the day before I received the ROM hack. I had been here in the hospital since then, for sprained ankles and several broken bones after getting hit by that car. Also a scar on my right shoulder that, according to the nurse, is showing no signs of healing. Brother says I'm lucky to be alive, but sometimes I wish I wasn't. I haven't seen that thing since I woke up either, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that sometimes I still feel it looking at me. I don't know of how I'll return to normal life after they let me go, but I do know one thing for sure. Never playing RainWorld ever again. It's a bad game anyway.